Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of our Southern California first time buyers market update. This is for October 22nd, 2021. Wow, it just keeps boggling my mind how fast this year has gone compared to how slow 2020 seemed to go. Anyhow, I'm Stephen Mead with Domicile Real Estate, where we are on a mission to help California's renters become homeowners. Something I want to talk about just briefly before we start on our stats is transparency in real estate. And I think, I think for most people, especially first-time home buyers out there, unless you are living under a complete rock, you've probably seen a couple of articles mentioning Department of Justice, mentioning real estate commissions, a whole bunch of things, and you might be wondering, how do you fit into that? I think that this is an industry that's been generally shrouded in kind of a sense of secrecy of how things work. My attitude has always been, I'm happy to share anything with any of our clients. I think the only people who are nervous about sort of like telling people the way things work or understanding how people get paid or how do real estate brokers make money, I think the only people that seem really concerned with shielding that and are very cagey about that are the people that kind of have something to hide, or they're people that maybe don't actually think that they're worth it. So, something that we're always willing to do for any of our clients is if you'd like to know how things work, or if you're having trouble sleeping, we're happy to explain exactly how this business works on the inside, which I think is, especially for some of maybe our more business savvy clients, even just out of curiosity, they're interested in that. But we're always willing to share that data. And I think, whether you talk to us or whether you talk to another broker, if you're curious about that, if you're wondering about that, be wary of anybody who's not willing to answer your questions or who wants things to be a secret, because really it's not necessary. I'm happy to explain that to anyone. Everybody on our team here is happy to explain how real estate commissions to anyone. I firmly believe that, one of the things being talked about is, do buyers need agency representation? Do buyers like you need someone who is kind of standing in their corner? And I believe 100% yes. In some other countries, there is no buyer representation, meaning you can only talk to the agent who's working for the seller, and that agent has zero allegiance to you. It's like buying a car off the car lot. The salesperson works for the dealership. They're not out there looking out for you. Whereas in the United States, buyer's agents by law are required to look out for your best interest. And I really think when you're buying what is, in Southern California, arguably something that'll probably be over $500,000, maybe even over $1 million as a first-time buyer, I think it is very important to have kind of as much advice that really is someone who has your back and is answering those questions in a way that is designed to be beneficial to you and looking out for you, not someone who has an allegiance to the seller. Anyhow, so if you have questions, definitely ask those. Let's jump into the stats, and we're going to talk about why are things not getting that much better, which is maybe not the happiest discussion, but I do think it's kind of an important discussion. So let's bring this up here and talk about what's happening and why. So as always, our first thing we're going to talk about is pricing. Do bear in mind that this is 4 to 6 weeks in the past. What do we see? Kind of a steady incline. We're here at $731,000. We saw that's for our entry level single family home, which is 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And then our entry level condo, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, that took a jump. And this condo number seems to move around a bit more, but I think the general trend is absolutely heading upward. And I think that's true for both of our pricing categories. I think we are seeing kind of a much slower, but sort of march upwards. I've called these inflationary gains in the past. I think that's about what they are. We are seeing some activity though in interest rates, right? And if you look here, that price increase that we had, that resulted in now we're up to $3,200 for our entry level condo. And just as a reminder, and I think I glossed over this, when we come up with these payment numbers, what are we basing this on? We're basing this on 5% down, which I think is a very realistic scenario for many of you watching. It includes any mortgage insurance, property taxes. In the case of our entry level condo, it actually includes an HOA fee. And the idea is to really give you a realistic look at what are the payments like for these mythical sample first quartile, prices that we're tracking. What do those payments actually look like using current interest rate data and current numbers? For our entry level single family home, I mean, you see we're just under $4,200 a month. And for our entry level condo, we are just over $3,200 a month. By no means are these cheap figures, but if you are out there renting, especially if you are renting a single family home, these numbers may not be, aren't that much bigger than what you are likely already paying. If we look at our minimal household income, what does it take to qualify for these payments if you have no other debts? Well, in our single family home, you need a household income of $102,000 or more. Here, if you are in our condo category, you need $78,490 or more as household income in order to qualify. And that is a minimum, assuming you have no other debts. Obviously, if you have a car loan, student loan debts, credit cards, that does require a bigger income to allow for kind of that total debt load. Okay, so now let's talk about market competition, and we're going to talk about the reason why these numbers aren't getting that much better for you. So before I begin, I want to mention something that we've mentioned before, right? And that is anything above, just as a general rule, anything above 70% is a seller's market. If you were to have a teeter-totter or the scales of justice, it would be tilted in favor of sellers. 80 to 90% is a very strong seller's market, and anything over 90% is just pretty much sellers get to write all the rules for the most part, right? And if we go back to this graph, I think what's important to sort of look at here is you'll see we are tied at 92% for both our entry level single family home as well as our entry level condo, 92% right here. And why are these numbers not getting better? We had some periods of time here when they were firmly in the 80s, right? Why have these numbers, why have they not really resisted in the fall? Why are they staying up? And something that I think is important for people to understand is the way housing markets move. And the reason why this happens and that housing markets move in this way is you have a number of forces that make a market more competitive, right? And that means upward pressure on prices. One of those factors is how much inventory is around. The lower the inventory, the more competitive a market, right? And then you have other factors that may lessen the competitiveness of a market and prices and all these other things that go along with that. For example, interest rates. As interest rates rise, that results in less demand, and that puts a downward pressure on prices. The problem is that at any given point in time, you have more than one of these forces working, sometimes in both directions, right? You have things that are pushing prices down, you have things that are pushing prices up, or market competition up. And when you have that, you're really trying to measure what do you think are the greatest effects. So it's not just identifying what's happening in the market, but understanding relatively how strong are those effects. And what we have happening right now that I think is important to understand is, yes, we have interest rates that are creeping up, but we have another force that really is kind of a big deal right now, and we're seeing it all over the market, and that is we're seeing that fall inventory drop. And that inventory drop is happening a lot faster than we're seeing demand drop. And you can see that, I think, in this next graph here, total inventory. So look at where we are in terms of entry-level single-family homes. We have deteriorated enough inventory away that we are back where we were at the beginning of June, right? And the beginning of June was the tail end of this crazy, crazy market. But I'm looking at the shape of this graph. And one of the things I keep coming back to, I've mentioned this before, look at where we are, just over 1,500 entry-level single-family homes in Los Angeles and Orange counties. Look at where we were in September of 2020. We were around 1,750. And look at where we were even towards November of 2020, we were hovering in that level, and that is not happening this year. This inventory is dropping, and that is increasing competition. We also have kind of this interesting effect I've talked about, where it's called non-homogeneous demand. It means that you can have two houses that are for sale, and one will experience 25 offers on it. The other one might only get two offers, or one offer, or zero offers. So what we're seeing is the level of competitiveness is also being concentrated in the direction of particular properties. What's the net result for you as a buyer? Well, the net result for you as a buyer is that it is still feeling crazy out there, even though this is the fall, even though this is supposed to be an easier time to buy a house. And I do think it's a little bit easier, right? I don't think we have the same level as it was in the spring. In fact, it's not the same level of inventory in the spring. The other thing is what I'm kind of calling the condo crisis. Now, if you look here, and you look at this number right now, look at where this inventory is. I mean, we are heading towards 1,000 units. Look at where we were last year, right? Last year we were over or almost double, maybe at least 50% more inventory. Condo inventory has never been this low, right? And why is that? Well, I think it's because a lot of condo owners are feeling like they may have missed their chance, and they don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to buy that upgraded property. As such, they're never putting their condo on the market. Now, the problem with that is we have plenty of people who still would like to be entry-level condo buyers. Looking at another measure of kind of our level of competitiveness, we saw this competitiveness level increase, and now it's kind of stuck around the 70% point for this 14-day still active. And this graph is inverted, meaning the lower the number here, the more competitive of a market. We saw with condos, that market kind of rose and was less competitive. And now I think this is trending downward, meaning the market is getting more competitive than it was kind of in that late summer period. That's not terribly unusual. Normally, late summer is kind of a soft market for us in Southern California, but just seeing kind of how sticky this competition is heading into the fall is kind of interesting. And it makes me wonder what that spring is going to look like. I'm not sure really. Finally, we have kind of our weak supply of homes. How much inventory do we have relative to how fast buyers are snapping things up? Well, here we are at under 3.5 weeks. I think if you look at this graph, one of the things you notice is that we never really had a fighting chance in inventory for these entry-level single-family homes. There was never a period of time when there was tons of inventory. If you look in the past year, I mean, there just wasn't. There have been a couple periods where it was a little bit better, but these numbers are slowly but surely kind of eroding, right? And I think this tells you everything you need to know of why this market isn't getting substantially easier. This weak supply of homes figure, this needs to go up. Look at what happened last year, right? Especially with the condos, 7.5 weeks, up to 9 weeks, 8 weeks, right? I mean, you look at this before it took a dive in the spring. Where are we today? Under 5 weeks, right? At no point really in 2020 where we had 5 weeks, less than 5 weeks of inventory in condos. So that should tell you something about that market is fundamentally different this year versus last year. Same thing right here with the single family homes. We're not in the twos like we were, but I wonder, we went in with more inventory into the spring this year. What's going to happen next spring? What's going to happen in that February time period, which is around where we hit these inventory lows, February, March, April? What's going to happen in 2022, given that we're already starting off with less inventory? So, not to be a salesy, these are the dangers of waiting type of a person. I mean, the reality is these are the dangers of waiting, right? Is that I don't see a lot of potential to say that the spring market's going to be easier for you. I think all signs are pointing it's going to be worse. So while this isn't the best market, or let me rephrase that. I think this is a very good market to buy a house. It's not an easy market to buy a house in, and I don't see it. It's not easy right now, and I don't see it getting easier in the next 6 months. I'm willing to kind of lay that down, that The only thing that might change that is if interest rates shoot through the roof suddenly, but then we will just be talking about a different problem that buyers are having, right? And that is seeing their buying power eroded significantly. So anyhow, I hope you guys find this useful. I think we have a link down below. If you'd like to schedule a consultation, we would love to chat with you, help answer any questions you might have. It's no cost, no obligation. So there's a link in the YouTube description to do that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And we will see you again next week for our whole market update, which comes out on Tuesdays. Have a great weekend, everybody.